This is Barrie, a city constantly evolving. At any time, a whole host of pressures challenge the intricate tapestry of city government. In this series, we will explore the priorities deemed essential for progress, even if they don't always inspire unanimous applause. Join me each week for a candid conversation with a member of our city government as we uncover the stories behind the scenes of Barrie, a city on the move. Welcome to Barrie, City on the Move. Thank you for welcoming us into your home or wherever you're receiving this content, either online or on YouTube. I'm glad to be here with you today. And in this series, we aim to explore the inner workings of City Hall, the operations and governance. And today, we're going to talk about something that's timely for most of us here in the region, and that's winter control. And I'm thrilled to have an amazing guest, someone I've known for a number of years and have grown to admire and respect, Dave Friary. Thank you for joining me. You are the Director of Operations with the City of Barrie, and we're going to talk snow.
Sure. Thank you for having me, and yeah, it is a timely topic for sure.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. Clearly, we have snow. We live in this region. We live in this country. It is typically an annual event, something that we all should be used to. Of course, unless you're somebody who's new to the region, new to the area, coming from another jurisdiction or another country. But snow is something that it's just part of being Canadian. And yet, we always struggle with it, enjoy it, contend with it, and you are tasked with leading a crew of people who make sure that the city continues to run, operations run, and we get from A to B safely. Talk to me, though, about preparing for winter control, preparing for this season. Give us some insights into what a day in the life of you and your operators looks like.
Well, it's never a dull moment for sure. And as you were saying, uniquely Canadian, what we have to realize around Barrie is, Barrie's very unique. If you Google the top snowiest cities in Canada, you'll find Barrie ranked anywhere from 6th to 8th. So, we get a lot of snow up here, and it's unpredictable. There's squalls that come in most of the time off of Georgian Bay. Anytime you have a temperature difference of 13 degrees between the air temperature and the water temperature, it generates a squall. So, we get new residents coming from the GTA, and they come up to Barrie, and they're surprised because we could get anywhere from 8 to 12 feet of snow per year. And, as we've seen in the last couple of weekends, 50, 60 centimeters can fall in a weekend, and it's sustained. So, it's something that we have to get used to. But my staff are very experienced in sort of monitoring and watching the snow and the storms come in, and we're always prepared. Recently, within the last 10 years, technology has become a big part of that. So around the city, we have 7 weather stations that tell us air temperature, pavement temperature. It'll even tell us how much salt is in the moisture on the ground. So then we know when to resend the plows out and stuff. So we use that, and hopefully we get everything right.
Hopefully we get everything right. I love it, and I love that you just sort of laid out what we're going to cover over the next hour, and I think that some of that is really fascinating. I think it's fair to say that on average, the majority of us don't think of it. We see it snow. If there's enough snow, we pull out our shovel, or we pull out our snow blower, or we hire a plow service, and we get our driveways cleared. But there is clearly a lot of science and data that goes into planning and forecasting and being ready for the conditions. Let's talk about some of that. You mentioned 7 weather stations. You mentioned pavement temperature monitoring, humidity or salt content monitoring, et cetera. Let's talk about salt just for a moment, because I think one of those favorite kitchen table discussions is, why in some parts of the country do they use sand? Why do they versus salt or brine? Give us a little bit of either chemistry or understanding of the conditions that would help you and your staff determine what the best process is in terms of application.
Yep, so we use all those products and technologies, and it's all very specific to temperature. So if it's extremely cold, once you get below -20, salt stops working. So then we'll switch to sand. In between 15 and 20 below, we use treated salt. So that salt is coated with magnesium chloride, and it'll actually get working to a colder temperature. And then we will also use straight salt when the temperature is 0 to -10. The anti-icing that you talked about, we'll put that down ahead of a storm. So if we can see a storm coming, freezing rain, we'll put that on the pavement. And what that does is it sticks to the asphalt, and it won't let the snow and ice bond to the asphalt. So it gives us a head start. So if we can't get out there for an hour and all of a sudden you get the freezing rain or black ice, it gives us a head start, and it keeps the residents safer. Sometimes we'll hear reports of people just driving out of town, and all of a sudden the roads are awful, or that people didn't get out. So we try and proactively fight the storm, and then while doing that, saving and trying to use the least amount of salt as we can because of the environment.
So you touched on a couple things that I think are significant, worth exploring just a little bit. You talked about using the least amount of salt where possible, but you also talked about you mentioned the word safety. That's got to be an interesting balancing act, because obviously there are a lot of people who are concerned about the environment, they're concerned about salt entering the water course, but at the same time, human life and safety. So what are some of the considerations you take in terms of determining how to best work with the right technology and the right application?
Well, safety is always number one. When we're talking about the environment, we have a number of source water protection areas in town. We still use half of our water comes from deep water wells. So the last thing we want is to pollute those wells. So in those areas where we can, we'll put down salt or sand instead of salt. So trying to use the least amount. So as I was mentioning, technology, all of the salters and sanders that we have are all computer controlled. So the control boxes in them, back in the day there used to be valves and handles, and this is all computer controlled now. So what happens is at the start of the run, the road patrolman who's in charge of all the operators, he'll give everybody the same setting. It's predetermined, and so we use technology inside the trucks as well as around the municipality.
Excellent. So let's back up a little bit, because a fair amount of training, if you're using computerized technology, yes, snow may happen every single year, and anywhere between 3 and 5 months of the year we might see some form of this type of precipitation. Typically we have a start date and an end date to the contract or to the service being offered to the residents, but in advance of that you're preparing for winter. What does the seasonal preparation look like?
Well, for us, we run what we call snow school. So we'll start in the summer months. We'll even do a little truck rodeo for the staff. We get an obstacle course set up at the operations center. We'll even put up barricades, as well as we get some old junk parked cars that we'll put around, and it just kind of gets the juices flowing. And then after that, just before winter control starts, we'll have snow school. So we bring everybody in, including the contractors. We give them the routes and sort of our expectations for the year. And it's all about safety. So what we'll actually get them to do also is run the routes. Get in your truck and run your routes. So, you may see one of those trucks running around in early October, with a plow on and everything. And it's to familiarize themselves with the routes. They'll also go and they'll report things like raised manhole covers. They can do a lot of damage if somebody hits a manhole. And also, during the summer, we're doing sidewalk inspections for trip hazards. They'll also report any overhanging branches, bushes that are encroaching onto the sidewalk. And then those work orders get passed off to our forestry department, who will go out and clear the limbs and things like that. So it's a year-round process for us.
Interesting. You wouldn't think about that in July, but just as a reference point, we've got a lot of roads and a lot of sidewalks. Off the top of your head, plus 1,600 kilometers of roads?
1,600 of roads, over 600 of sidewalks. And and we're always adding. So that's one of the challenges. And if you go into the south end, for example, you get a lot of new developments, and there seem to be higher density. Everything's a lot smaller. Snow storage isn't as good. And it's something that we really have to kind of plan for. Some things that you may not even think of as well is, okay, so we added Brine Drive and we added, Big Bay Point Harvey. They're big roads. They're 6 lanes. It may not seem that long, but it's 6 lanes, and then on top of that there's sidewalks, and now bike lanes are a new thing. So we have to make sure we get those maintained as well.
So that is a lot of planning, and I can, you talked about the fact that you're sending operators out in advance. Familiarize yourself. By the time the snow comes down, you can't see where that sidewalk is. We'll come back after the break and talk about that in a couple of minutes. But it's one thing to see that landscape or that sort of topography, et cetera, when it's summer, and it's a completely different picture in the winter. So planning. Just before we do go to break, though, give me an idea of the complement. You mentioned contractors coming in to do training as well. Is that a budgetary consideration that you call in contractors if there's a larger event, or is it just to sort of keep the budget in check? How does that work?
Our contractors are contracted for the entire year. They're on call. They have to be available when we need them. They're not allowed to take their trucks off site. They sit parked at the operations center, and when we need them, they're available 24/7. So it's up to them to provide not only the equipment but the operators. So if it's a extended 24-hour event, they need to come up with 2-3 drivers. The MTO has regulations that doesn't allow operators to run more than 13 hours. So, you have to send them home, get some rest. So they need to have the appropriate amount of staff as well. So, we do pay standby, and then once we send them out, we pay, sort of a smaller amount, but it's all stuff we have to plan for. So it's a balancing act between city staff and contracted.
Excellent. Well, when we come back from the break, let's get into some of the questions that might be frequently asked questions, or how can residents best understand, why are some of these things that we see that seem to be a little bit peculiar, why are they happening? And I always like to give the benefit of the doubt that the experts and the engineers who are doing all this planning actually know what they're doing. And me on Facebook, I'm more of an armchair quarterback observing, but there's got to be some logic behind some of those decisions. Let's have some of those conversations so that we can clear the air, so to speak, and get into some of the details around priority and why wasn't my street cleaned and those kinds of things. So I've got Dave Friary, who's the Director of Operations with the City of Barrie. We're talking winter control, snow clearing, snow maintenance. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Although Barrie's winter weather can be unpredictable, city snow removal efforts are not. The city is committed to providing a high level of snow removal service throughout the winter season. Using a combination of city staff and contractors, plowing, sanding, and salting is performed with consideration to safety, environmental, and budget concerns. The city's winter maintenance responsibilities include 1,575 kilometers of road, 662 kilometers of sidewalks, 25 parking lots, 72 crosswalks, and downtown sidewalk intersections. For main or priority roads, as well as secondary roads, 5 centimeters of snow has to fall for road crews to be called out. Priority roads are serviced 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when needed. For residential streets, which receive less traffic, it's 8 centimeters of snow that has to fall before they are plowed. The full cleanup of roads depends on when snowfall ends. This ranges from 12 to 24 hours after end of snowfall.
So for the people who wonder why we sometimes drive with the plow up, right now is one prime example why. This is a contractor route we're traveling to get to my route. He has just gone by and dropped salt. So that salt is now working. So if I put my blades down, all I'm going to do is scrape it off, and it's just basically been a waste.
You can use Barrie's online plow tracker to see when your street was last serviced. To find out more about sidewalk plows and winter maintenance in Barrie, visit barrie.ca/snow.
Welcome back to Barrie City on the Move. I'm joined by Dave Friary, who's the Director of Operations with the City of Barrie, and we're talking snow. And before the break, we kind of got a little bit of a 101 on snow and the different types of equipment, the different amounts of operators, the different types of weather events, et cetera. But we'll get into some of the details. And one of the things that really does come to mind is, again, people talk, people chatter, social media, we share things. There are people who feel like, I got some questions about when is my street getting cleared, or why is this happening? And there is a method to the madness, and there's some logic that goes in, and obviously there's some priorities in terms of the planning. Give us an idea of what some of your priorities are when addressing, for example, a winter event.
Well, first thing I would encourage the public to do is check the website, city website or our app. We post all of our winter operations on there, and it'll even tell you what we're doing at that moment. When did the plows start going out? What we try and do is do most of our work at night where everybody's sleeping, which is why we have the parking restriction in place. So the guys will come in 11 o'clock. They'll get out there and start cleaning up when everybody's asleep and no cars. So we can do it faster, more efficiently, and safer. So people can check on Plow Tracker as well. It's got live drawings and maps of exactly when your plow went by the last. So we often do get calls saying, I haven't seen a plow in 4 or 5 days. Well, it's because they were around when you were sleeping, and unfortunately we may have gotten 5-6 centimeters of snow overnight as well. So depending on where you are at the start of the route or the end of the route, but we certainly monitor everything. We have staff that are out 24/7. So we call them road patrollers. And so we have 2 staff that drive around throughout the day and evening, just making sure the roads are in good shape.
Now, you've got over the years, you've been in this role, you've been with the city for almost 30 years, and you've been in this role directing operations for about 15, I think you mentioned. You've seen a few seasons, you've gotten to see some patterns. Of course, there are going to be some anomalies that may happen. We had an ice storm a number of years back that was a bit of an anomaly, but I imagine that you've got your hot spots or your sort of repeat offender areas where there's maybe a hill that's going to require some extra attention. In terms of prioritization, though, is it fair to say that there is some favoritism or priorities that's played to different areas, and for good reason? Oh,
absolutely. So we'll have, and it's on the website as well, so you can find out what your street is designated as. So priority routes are transit routes, school buses, areas with large hills, areas with a lot of traffic. So, for those areas, salt, and they'll be our first priority. So during the last snowstorm, you'll notice that, the Dunlop Street, the Bayfield, Ann Street, it's almost constant. They're 24/7. Then you'll have like the smaller residential streets. We'll get out there, maybe once, twice a day. We usually wait till the evening, and those areas will get sand instead of salt. The reason we maintain those to snow-packed is, cost for one thing. Salt is pricey, and the environment. It's a lot friendlier on the environment when we're not putting all that salt down. So we put the sand down, maintain it to snowpack, and hopefully the sand, which has about 5% salt in it as well, but it'll give you traction and keep you safe.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important distinction. You'll see some roads that are where you're going to see bare asphalt. Mm-hmm. But on the secondary routes, as you're saying, or the residential streets, you're likely to not see the asphalt. You're likely to see the what you called snowpacked.
Correct.
Because there's going to be a lower layer, the blade's a little bit lifted?
About 1/8 of an inch, if that. So they run the shoes, and
got it,
and that gets them, not being caught on cracks and manholes. And
So
things like
one,
that.
it's better for the environment. Two, it's cheaper a little bit, and not spending all that money, but
Yep.
on the salt.
Yep.
But three, it actually protects the road a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
That's good to keep in mind.
Yeah, and don't get rid of those snow tires. You still need them, even though you travel a lot on the highway or the primaries. It helps in stopping distance, et cetera. So.
And that's an interesting fact. I'm glad we're going to do a little bit of PSA here for folks. But all season tires does not mean 4 seasons. It means pretty much spring
Correct.
through fall. And it's the compound in the rubber that the
It's
all
softer.
seasons are softer that allow them to grip and traction more. So, okay, so look on the sidewall of your tire, and if you see a
Snowflake, yep.
you're good to
You're
go.
good to go.
Stopping distance, and that's the other thing. It's not how fast you can go.
Correct.
It's can you handle the corner, and can you stop, and can you not hit that other car or a child
Correct.
that's coming through school. So you did mention that a lot of the clearing happens at night. Reduced traffic, it's safer, kids aren't walking to school,
Correct.
et cetera. But there are still some who might forget to move their car.
Yes, that is very much a concern for our staff. When you're driving a truck that's 12, 15 feet wide, it can get pretty hairy if you have somebody parked in a curb lane, and there are streets that we've had people park sort of across from each other on the roadway, and we can't do your street. We have to back up, which is extremely troublesome in a vehicle that big. So, you're not making any friends with your neighbors either, because all of a sudden there's going to be a huge windrow in the middle of the street. So what we ask people to do is, if you don't have to park on the road, even during the day, if there's possibility for you to sort of park in your driveway, please do. And it even goes down to spring when we're doing street sweeping. We get a lot of calls, people parking on the street, and the neighbors will sort of complain, saying, well, you came down our street, my neighbor was parked in front of my house, and now I got a big pile of dirt there. Mm-hmm. But don't panic there. We always come back. Just call into the city and let us know where you are and what the situation was, and we'll send the street sweeper back.
Do your plows have dash cameras on them?
Some do. We've piloted a couple. Our road patrol certainly does, so we can, as they're driving around, and if we have to record any of the, the road conditions and things like that, we have those available.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about you did mention in some of the newer subdivisions, they're higher density, and maybe the driveway wasn't big enough for 4 cars, and you've got tail ends of cars hanging out onto the street. I can imagine that some of those are going to get clipped by a blade every once in a while.
Correct. And we've got a direct line to enforcement services and bylaw. So if there are sidewalks that are blocked, roadways that are blocked, they do have staff on over the winter, strictly for winter control. So we just pick up the radio, call them in, let them know, and obviously they can't be towed away, but you may get a ticket.
Right. So, and not all weather events are the same. We've all seen packing snow versus that sort of light dry snow.
Yep.
How does that change the way you do your job?
It's just getting up in the morning and having a look at that weather forecast. If there's a flash freeze coming, we may go out and salt ahead of time. If it's wet and heavy, we know we want to get out and plow more because it's going to be tough to move. The dry, fluffy stuff, high winds, squalls, and drifting. So each snowstorm and storm is unique, and it's just experience that the guys have and knowing sort of what to do and how to fight that storm.
Mm-hmm. So, in a given year, this is not a small undertaking. We talked earlier, you're about 1,600 kilometers of roadway. You've got just over 600 kilometers of sidewalk and growing. Add to that, we've got more surface area for bike lanes, whether they're separated or incorporated bike lanes. there's a cost to doing all of this. And you said, you got to have the equipment and the staff on standby, whether or not we're using them. They've got to pay a standby fee. That's only fair. They got to put food on their table. Give us an idea of what the actual economic impact or financial impact of this is.
And it depends year to year, as you know. So, last year I think we're upwards of $8 million. So that is, the largest chunk of our budget. It's what we plan for. When you have to buy, 15,000 tons worth of salt, you get up $1.5 million, $2 million. So it depends from year to year. If you get a heavy year, we've used almost 28,000 tons of salt. Obviously we don't like to use that much salt, but it all comes at a cost. And then there's the overtime cost. We're fortunate enough that, council has given us the appropriate resources to run 2 shifts in the winter for city staff. So there's no waiting. As soon as that starts snowing, there are people available to get out there and fight the storm. When they're not doing that, they're filling potholes. They're doing all those things that the day shift are doing, but they're just doing it at night. And it saves on overtime, and we can get things done quicker and more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna get into some of the things that you've teased there, and I appreciate that. But there is no waiting is something that I think is quite important to say. Obviously, we're going to start with the priority routes.
Yep.
But no waiting doesn't necessarily mean a blade going across the road, but it could be preparation, and it could be other things along those lines. When we come back from the break, I would like to get into a little bit more detail on the sidewalk clearing, the costs associated with that, but also what residents can do to help, what they should know, some accessibility issues and concerns that are raised. So let's talk sidewalks when we come back. So stay with us. For more from Dave Friary, Director of Operations, we're talking winter control in the city of Barrie. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Barrie City on the Move. We're talking winter control with Dave Friary, Director of Operations at the City of Barrie. And we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered, okay, pun intended, I suppose, but we've covered a lot of the road clearing. We've talked about some of the nuances of the different types of weather events and the different types of snowfall. Obviously, concern and priority number one is safety, and a close right behind that is obviously protecting the water and the environment. But there's some other areas and nuances when living in an area and a climate such as ours in Barrie, where we get a significant amount of snowfall, and that includes those who are simply out enjoying their neighborhood, going for a walk, or depend on using a bicycle or walking, or maybe a walker or a wheelchair or other accessibility considerations. We've got lots of sidewalks, and a number of years ago, I don't know if the city was necessarily precedent setting, but the city chose and elected, probably with some input from residents, to pay for, as part of the tax base and a base service, to clear sidewalks. But it wasn't law, and I don't think it still is law. But what are some of the interesting elements of taking on the task of clearing sidewalks versus other municipalities that haven't done that yet?
Yeah, well, we've been doing sidewalks for over 20, 30 years now. There is certain municipalities that'll enact a bylaw which pushes the responsibility for clearing the sidewalks in front of your house to the resident. Now, the city is still liable for anything that could happen, but you could get a ticket for doing that. Barrie getting as much snow as we do, it would be extremely hard for a resident to be expected to kind of do a large sidewalk in front of their house. So, over the years we've expanded our sidewalk services. We're up to 22 contractors now. We've, in the early season, because there isn't a lot of frost in the ground yet, trying not to damage a lot of sod, we'll start using brooms. So if you see a sweeper broom, just sort of pushing the snow off the sidewalk, a little bit more snow, a little bit colder temps, we'll switch to V-blades, which just pushes the snow off the sidewalk in sort of a windrow fashion. And when it gets really deep, last weekend, we had to switch to blowers. Now the blowers, although they can throw a lot of snow, they're about twice as slow as anything else, because you have to creep along. And, so last weekend, you probably noticed that it would take twice as long to see a sidewalk machine come around again, but we had to get out. We have to move the snow off the sidewalk and push it onto the boulevard and hopefully keep things accessible. We'll put we'll put a little bit of sand down to stop any slip falls, and that sand will have a little bit of salt in it as well to help melt some of the stuff too.
So in terms of managing some expectations, what can residents expect? The residents are not the operator. The residents are not the city of Barrie. The residents come out of their house and they expect to see a clear sidewalk. But in reality, it's not always that simple, as you mentioned. Depending on the gear, depending on how heavy the snow is or what type of snow it is, it may take longer to service. Can we assume similar priorities around major thoroughfares, major roadways are going to get cleared first before secondaries?
Yeah, absolutely. So, school routes, arterial roads, things like that, we'll run them 24/7. If it's a residential, we typically run those 12 hours. The guys will come in at 4 o'clock in the morning and they'll work till 4 o'clock at night. There is also the opportunity to bring people in on overtime if it gets really bad. But to a snowpack level, for the most part, we do our best. You may see, as the temperatures warm up, things get a little slushy and things like that. That's when you'll see, our crews out, and we'll do an extra run just to try and get some of the slush off the roadway. Some of the issues that we hear from residents is we've seen the sidewalk machine go down the road or down the sidewalk. Hasn't snowed. The sidewalks seem bare. What are you wasting money? And it's no. We're sending them out to do their entire route, inspect the sidewalks. With climate change, we're getting a lot of freeze thaw. So during the day, temperatures 1-2 degrees, you get a lot of water. Overnight, it'll freeze. And then, with the banks on the sidewalks, the windrows built up, that water's got nowhere to go. So it'll freeze up and it'll be like little mini skating rinks all the way down. It may not be in front of your house, but it could be in front of your neighbor's house. So it's a lot cheaper for us to send a crew out in a sidewalk machine and inspect all the sidewalks than it is to deal with somebody having a slip and fall or somebody hurt themselves seriously.
There's some liability in there
Absolutely.
as well. Now, there are other reasons. You mentioned, people noticing that there's a machine going down the road and they don't seem to be doing anything, and it's fine. Why are we wasting money?
Yeah.
You talked about inspecting and you talked about some freeze thaw. You can also get some pavement heaving, but part of your seasonal preparation includes inspection as well. And marking,
Trip hazards.
Trip hazards, yeah.
Yeah, so you may see a couple of years we've used kids on bikes. It's a good job for a summer student. We've used little golf carts that we've rented and things like that. So if you see them out on the out and about in the community, that's what they're doing. So
now, what role can a resident play in that if the resident notices that there is a sidewalk that's sort of heaved or something like that?
Service Barrie. Whether you report it online or call it in, we truly appreciate it. That helps us out as well. So what happens when you call in there, they will create a service request, which is trackable by you if you want to call back in, and it immediately goes to the correct department. So it's not bouncing around City Hall on a phone call and playing phone tag. Service Barrie knows exactly who to contact and who to send it to, and as I said, it's trackable. Yeah,
and for anybody who hasn't used it, I'll tell you this: I've used it myself on a number of times, whether it's to report a pothole, whether it's to report a piece of playground equipment that may or may not be working, or the sidewalk. And you're right, and the team at Service Barrie, you instantly get a notification. We've received your message, we've received your complaint. Someone will, here's your incident number or your ticket number. Someone will follow up with it, and 100 times out of 100. Not that it's been 100. I've received really prompt and efficient right through to the end of the matter being rectified. So good stuff. Definitely an endorsement for that. The other thing, though, is I'm seeing a truck driving down the street and it's got its lights flashing and it's not doing anything. What are we doing about it? And I guess I'll sort of preface this with, not all trucks are created equal and not all routes are equal. And why might we see a truck passing my street not doing anything?
Well, we have designated routes. So, with, for example, a sidewalk machine even, it takes them a lot of time to get across town. So from the operations yard on Ferndale to get to the southeast corner of town, they don't go that fast. It may take, 30 minutes to drive across town. We can't have them stopping and kind of pushing snow all the way over there. Each route is designed, and we have route optimization plans. So we've had consultants come in, and they plot everything out on GIS maps. And at the start of the year, the guys will get their map. This is your route, and they'll decide on where to start their route, and their time to finish in about 10 to 12 hours, which coincides with the MTO regulations on how long they can drive. So, one time around the route will take your entire shift.
That's fascinating. And the word that was coming to mind as you were speaking was data. And you talked about right off the top of the show that you have really over the years sort of evolved to embrace data and evolved to embrace technology to help guide decisions and planning, et cetera. One of those things that we started to touch on was potholes, and you talked about sod repair. Let's throw in a plug real quick. City of Barrie, or barrie.ca/snow is a website that's got a whole ton of information on it. Yes, you can report through the, 705-726-4242.
Correct.
And hit 0 and you'll go to the operator or service Barrie. But on top of that, though, I'd say the biggest plug, and probably actually if people are worried about tax dollars and where time is spent and money is wasted, et cetera, if you want to bypass all of that and use the app, you're going straight into the database with that as well. You can download this from any Android phone or iPhone app store, and it's the City of Barrie's just app.
And it's free. You can do potholes, as I said. You can find out, when your garbage and recycling day is, all those things. It's a wealth of knowledge, and it certainly helps you sort of navigate City Hall.
Yeah, no, true, and I'm glad we're talking about that. And for those who are interested, it's interesting. You drive down the street and you go, oh, there's a pothole, that's going to cost me a lot of money in my car. We live in Canada, we live in Barrie, we have cracks, there's freeze, there's thaws, the blades go over it, whatever. That's going to create potholes. 1,600 kilometers worth of roads. It's not possible for your two patrollers to know where every single pothole is. We live in a wonderful city. We can always self-report.
Absolutely.
And that's going to, you said that helps you.
It does. So I can tell you last year we filled 17,000 potholes. So is that good or is that bad? We would prefer not to fill any potholes, but we take that very seriously. And once we hit pothole season, February, March, we'll have a couple crews out even on weekends. And they're out there, they're filling potholes. It's technology has certainly helped us. The operators, you'll see them driving around in a 1-ton truck with either coal patch or a hot box that we have. They're looking at their phone, not while they're driving, but they're looking at their phones. And what happens is there'll be a little blue pin that'll show up on their phone on where that pothole is because somebody reported it. So what they do is they drive up to the pothole, they'll measure it, usually with their boot, and record how much asphalt or coal patch went in there. They'll hit their phone again, and that little pin will turn red, and it tells the database and the people that are kind of looking at that information that pothole was filled. So. From a liability point of view, we can tell people when they called in, yeah, that was filled, yesterday at 7 o'clock. We fully realize that in some of these conditions, the coal patch and stuff isn't a permanent fix. We know that. So,
but the asphalt plants shut down at a certain temperature in December or something like that.
Correct. And again, we've used technology. We've got a little bit of a asphalt recycling machine in the hot box. You put in old asphalt, chunks of asphalt, mix it with a little bit of emulsion, and we can have a very limited amount, but it helps us out with filling those potholes. It lasts a lot longer than that coal patch did.
I appreciate that, and as some people love winter and they love to go skiing and snowboarding, other people, they can't wait for that next season. And so when we come back from the break, let's talk about what's, before we know it, we're going to be into that next season. That's called pothole repair season, if I'm not mistaken, or spring. But let's talk about what we have on deck for coming up in spring, and what residents can anticipate there. So stay with us for more information from Dave Friary, City of Barrie, Director of Operations. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Barrie City on the Move, and Dave Friary and I are talking about winter. And you know what? Winter's not all getting rid of the snow. Some of it's embracing the snow and having some fun with it and enjoying it. And Tourism Barrie's doing their work to bring people in to use our neighboring ski hills, and we have Winterfest. I'm sure that's
2 weeks.
2 weeks away from
February
now.
1st, 2nd.
Okay, you heard it here. February 1st, 2nd, Winterfest. But also, your department also takes care of some of the fun, and a lot of over the years, a lot of neighborhood communities have sort of banded together and converted tennis courts into skating rinks and the parks, etc. Talk about what's sort of starting to get some traction and ramp up right about now this year.
Well, in the past, it's been about 27, 28 is our capacity for volunteer rinks. So what we do is we assist the residents in getting the rink started. We walk them through kind of what needs to be done. Obviously you need water, so there's hydrants that have to be accessed, give them the wrenches and the appropriate things, and we also inspect them on a regular basis, make sure they're safe and still good to use. So we love working with the community, doing that. On top of that, there's the waterfront trail. That almost gets treated like a roadway. The people are out there all weekend, every day, walking around the waterfront. We've in Sunnydale Park. Obviously, there's a toboggan hill that we keep an eye on. There's fat bike trails and snowshoeing and cross-country ski stuff. And it's as you said, it's nice to embrace winter as well. It's not all doom and gloom.
Absolutely, and I'm just going to throw this out as a plug. It's certainly not your department, but I think it's in everybody's best interest. Stay off the lake for now, and maybe it's while getting involved in your neighborhood and volunteering is a great idea. It's not necessarily good idea to be the volunteer to test out the thickness of the ice in the lake. We have recently heard of some people who needed some rescue assistance from the fire service, etc. Not recommended. Wait for the bulletins, that kind of thing. But down by the waterfront, there is also the artificial rink.
Correct.
That is cooled. I know your team doesn't maintain that. Recreation services.
Our rec staff. Yep.
They maintain that, but there's lots to do.
Lots to do. At City Hall, there's the rink there, and fortunately with the refrigeration units on both those areas, we get an extra maybe 3-4 weeks out of them. And when you get those warm temperatures that we had a few weeks ago, for the most part, they're still usable.
Excellent. That's great. But we are getting into and planning for the next season, and we joked about it, or maybe I did, and maybe it wasn't maybe it was a dad joke, if you want to call it that, but pothole season.
Correct.
We're getting into spring. There is some planning to do for that as well. And of course, you talked about the sweepers, and you talked about, the assistance from residents to kind of keep their cars off the road where possible.
Yep.
Again, what have the years of experience taught you, and what should we be looking forward to?
Well, February, March is usually when the potholes really start to show up. So again, the freeze-thaw cycle, you get the water, it gets in the cracks, freezes, expands, and you magically have a pothole. So please report them. As I said, we're using different technologies now. We're trying to use some of the hotter asphalt. During the spring months, once it warms up, we also have a Durapatch unit that comes out, and it puts aggregate with a tar emulsion into those holes, and we've had good luck with that. Some of the patches have lasted 4 or 5 years. So, we're using different technology. We constantly check to see what others are doing, and it's all about getting people around safely in town. The last thing you want to do driving around is to hit that unexpected pothole and damage a rim or a tire. So we take that very seriously, and it's one of our top priorities coming into the season.
Mm-hmm. And now, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, because you did talk about getting around safely. Mm-hmm. Practicing patience. We got a lot of the operators. They've got a tough job, and you said that their equipment is what, 12, 13, 15 feet?
Yeah, some of the plows are, they're wide with the big wing down. So we appreciate the patience on the part of the citizens. Don't pull out in and around somebody. Every year we have somebody trying to pass a plow on the right-hand side as we're making a big sweeping turn. They won't notice that the wing's out. So those flashing lights on the back are to warn you and say, hey, it's it's a big machine, it's a heavy machine, and it's going slow, and it can't really maneuver all that well, in and around what you're doing. So just please be careful.
You don't need an accident, you don't need anybody injured, and I don't think any operators want to go home knowing that they were involved in something that injured anybody as well.
Correct.
Same thing for the sidewalk operators. They're in and out, moving traffic into the roads. Obviously, they've got to be aware of moving traffic as well, but watch your kids. Don't play in snowbanks. What else do we need to let people know?
Yeah, pedestrians, when we encounter a pedestrian, we stop the machine, make sure the blower, gets shut off. Please don't let your kids, build forts in the right of way. If you are going to do a little fort or something, make sure it's well off the roadway, well off the sidewalk, your backyard, what have you. But the roadways and the right of way is definitely a concern for all of our staff, and it's it's something that we remind them of on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. So as we go into spring, and as the snow starts to melt, and I noticed this earlier on in December, and we talked about this right off the top of the show. You said you've got your crews that go around on the route sometimes, in July or even in October, getting familiar with the route, as well as getting familiar with the condition of the surfaces and the equipment themselves. But invariably, somebody's front grass, their sod, is going to get damaged.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen.
Yep.
And when there's a blanket of snow, your GPS is good, but it's not that good. It's the snowplow is going to eat up a bit of your a bit of the resident's grass. To some, that's very disappointing and disturbing, and a lot of people put a lot of care and effort into maintaining their lawns, and that's understood. However, not all's lost.
Yeah, so call in to the city, give them your address. We'll be around in the spring to fix it up. What I can tell you is part of the contractor's contract, they also are responsible for sod repairs. So obviously they don't want to damage your sod either. So it's not like they're doing it on purpose. It is very difficult to see where the sidewalk is. The other challenge is these machines are big. People are, constantly say, well, why can't you get a smaller machine? Well, you need a large machine with a large engine to push that much snow. If you're down in Toronto or the GTA where they don't get a lot of snow, you may be able to get away with some of these smaller, narrower plows, but they have big diesel engines in them, and to push that around, that is the absolute minimum width that you can get these machines are, and the implements on the front are 40, 50 inches wide, and unfortunately that's about the same width as the sidewalk. And what you'll find out too is in some of the older areas, when you bought your house, the sidewalk was elevated and the grass was sort of down. That's how they're designed. You've been there, 20, 30 years, you'll notice that the sidewalk's down here, and then the turf is built up on the side, and you're going to get it peeled up. And the sod actually starts to encroach on the sidewalk. So it's always a challenge, but I know a lot of people, I think everybody takes a lot of pride in their front yard and their grass, and don't feel bad about calling in. Please call it in. We'll get there. Usually, if it's just a little bit of topsoil and seed, we can get there right away. If it's a full sod, chunk of sod that you need. Typically, it takes a little bit longer. Sod isn't ready till about end of May. So we have to wait till the greenhouses and the contractors make
Right.
sod available.
And so it's not extra tax money, it's not a waste of tax money. I mean, yes, it's being priced into the contract and
Correct.
it's being accounted for. So yes, anybody who says yes, it's still tax dollars, yes, it's still tax dollars, and yes, you live in a snowy community. So it is part of it.
Yep.
They don't have to call in. Residents can repair their own
Absolutely.
if they want to
Yeah.
and get right on it, or you can make use of the service that's available.
Yeah, fortunately, sometimes you can just roll it back. If it peels off nicely, you can just kind of roll it back, and that's what staff do. And then, if you're unable to do that, as I said, please call it in, and we'd be happy to get out there and fix it up.
Excellent. And what do we have to look forward in terms of priority around street sweeping? We, again, right off the top of the show, we talked about safety first. We talked about the environment second. I believe that there's a bit of a priority around street sweeping as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's the same thing with the environment. We'll get out to the source water protection areas first, around the wells, around the lakeshore. Last thing we want is to have any of that debris to get into Lake Simcoe, obviously, or our drinking water. So we'll have that all cleaned up as soon as we can. Last year we did pilot the sweeper tracker, so you can see where the sweepers are, and which we do is we'll go into different areas, and we get it done as soon as we can. I know people get a little edgy and they want it done ASAP, but we do our best.
We're back to 1,600 kilometers.
1,600 kilometers, and they move slow. So.
And they move slow, absolutely. Now, some things that residents can do, obviously, for the protection of the neighborhood: keep your fire hydrant, area around your fire hydrant clear. The last thing that you need a firefighter to be doing is digging out the hydrant when they could be saving the house or the people inside it. And then also the storm basins, the catch basins.
Catch basins, keep them clear if they're in front of your house. If you're not sure where they are in front of your house, if there is one, try Google Street View. Type in your house, and it has different years, and they always take the pictures in the summertime. So you pull it up, and magically your storm catch basin will appear, and you know where it is and where to shovel.
Oh, we've covered a lot of ground. Again, sorry about that for those at home hating my puns. Covered a lot of ground, covered a lot of area in terms of getting familiar with what your operators do and the planning that goes into it. I know at the end of the season, you'll also do a debrief to see what we learned from the season, what we might plan for differently. But best thing that residents can do is visit barrie.ca/snow or download the app. Participate in the app, get familiar, and it's not just for winter control, it's for all things City of Barrie, recreation planning and garbage and recycling, etc. Any final thoughts for folks at home, though?
Feedback. Just give us feedback. Good, bad. If we did something good, you can let us know. If there's an issue or a question you have, just contact us, and we'd have to either answer the question or add it to our debriefing at the end of the year. We can always do better.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you joining me here today. Appreciate your expertise. Thanks for sharing the information. Thanks for your many years of service as well to the City of Barrie. I've enjoyed this conversation and really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you getting the message out.
And to you, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Take care.